Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome back into To The Point. Hope you all had a great weekend. I know there's a lot of concerts this weekend. There's Cavendish, there's Zach Bryan in Quebec. So whatever you did, I hope you enjoyed it. But it is the dog days of summer when it comes to the sports calendar. The only negative thing about living on the East Coast, well, there's more than one. But the main thing is when there's nice weather out, the sports dry up. NFL is in a lull right now. NHL, NBA news is going to quiet down. But in saying that, it was a very active sports weekend. We are heading into this week where it's the 4 days where really nothing happens. Tonight there's the home run derby. I know Pete Alonso is in it because he's won it twice and he wants to tie Ken Griffey Jr. I know Vladdy is in it. I believe Julio Rodriguez is in it. I don't know. I think there's eight competitors, and I know 3 of them. And tomorrow night there's an all-star game. I don't know who's starting. I don't know who's the starting pitcher for the game. But this week, this is my hope. This is what I want to happen. I want content to come in, stories to break, things to talk about, so that I don't have to watch the home run derby or the all-star game, because I have no interest in doing that. None. I don't care who wins the home run derby tonight. To be honest, Mission Impossible Part 7, Part 1 is coming out later this week. I haven't been to a movie in theaters in 3.5 years. And I'd like to go. I think I might go later in the week to see Tom Cruise do his thing. I was not on board for the Love Fest for Top Gun, but I'm going to go see and actually watch Ghost Protocol. I'm rewatching some of the Mission Impossibles. Watched it last night. It was okay. Pretty good. About a 7 out of 10, maybe 6.5. Still got 5 and 6 to watch before I go see Dead Reckoning, I think it's called, later in the week. Tom Cruise, Ving Rhames, and the Funky Bunch. But that's what I would like to do this week instead of watching the All-Star game. But if no content comes in, then I'll have to pretend to watch these stuff. But there is lots to dive into later in the week. We can talk about the Major League Baseball at this point of the season, where things stand, teams that quite honestly surprised me. There was a trade in the NHL last night that I didn't expect to happen this quickly, or an extension to be signed. But Alex Debrincat is no longer an Ottawa Senator. But I want to start today with the UFC. Saturday night was one of the best events the UFC has ever put on, in my opinion. UFC 290 was phenomenal from start to finish. There were 4 fights where there were finishes within 40 seconds, which is a new record for an event. It had intrigue, it had emotional moments with the retirement of Robbie Lawler, 2 title fights, a dramatic scene. It had everything you'd want. It was a very aggressive night, and that's fighting. There was injuries, everything happened. But talking about dominance and just athletes that have been on top of their sport for a long time. Alexander Volkanovski is 34 years old, the featherweight champion of the world. He's 34, and you think 34, you got to slow down sometime. He's not. He is getting better seemingly with every fight. This past weekend, he fought Yair Rodriguez, his toughest test to date. An interesting fighter with unique stances, interesting kicking game, and just so unorthodox. A really hard guy to game plan for, and it was one-way traffic. Alexander Volkanovski put him out early and often, and why I say he's getting better with every fight, his only loss in the last decade was to Islam Makhachev at 155 at lightweight. And it was razor thin. It was really close. But he's never lost a featherweight fight. But Volk was always a good boxer, was always really good on his feet, beat Max Holloway 3 times, whose striking game is one of the best in UFC history. But he's improving on the ground. He's getting submission attempts. He's more and more creative with the way he does things, and he's not afraid to go to the ground with opponents. He was on the ground with Islam, and Islam could never get a submission attempt in because he was set, he was ready. He's worked on that, and he's even better than he used to be. But seeing him strike the way he shot for a takedown, ended up winning the fight in the 3rd round via just ground and pound punches. Volk, to me, is not as big a star as other names in the UFC is because every fight he's in, you know he's going to win. And that's dominance. That's what you want to see an athlete do, is dominate. It could be Yair Rodriguez. It could be Josh Emmett. It could be Max Holloway, the Korean Zombie, Brian Ortega. It doesn't matter. He gets into the cage with them and he beats them. And it's really impressive. It's just, okay, I'm going to fight this guy. Maybe I won't win the first round, but I'll win eventually. Or I'll beat them on points. Whatever I have to do to retain my championship, I'll do it. So, in saying that, where do we go from here with Volkanovski? He said in his post-fight interview that he needs to get surgery on his arm. He needs to go back to Australia and have surgery. 6 to 8 week recovery, it was reported yesterday. Now, in February, he fought in Perth with Islam for the lightweight title, and he lost by a razor thin margin. He wants that rematch. He wants to be a 2-division champion. Now, Charles Oliveira said to TSN's Aaron Bronstetter on Saturday that he wouldn't be ready to fight in October. That he would fight, he wants to get the belt back, but he'd fight in November, maybe December. Well, that's not going to happen. Islam's been sitting, he's fighting on that card in Abu Dhabi in October because they like having the Muslim fighters fight in Abu Dhabi. It's good for promotion. You're going to see Khamzat Chimaev fight on that card. So that's not being moved. So he needs an opponent. So does UFC want to give Volk another title opportunity? Because to me, that's the most exciting lightweight title fight that you can put on right now. Volk v. Islam in Abu Dhabi, the rematch from earlier in the year. That's going to sell. That's a really good main event. If you have Khamzat fight Jared Cannonier as the co-main, that's going to do pretty well. Because if it's not Volk, who does need surgery, but says he could recover in time, it can't be Charles. Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier are going to be fighting in 3 weeks at the end of July. But that's going to be a hellacious fight. That's going to be a bloodbath. The first fight, Dustin could hardly walk after the fight, and he won it. Neither of those guys are going to be ready to fight in October after they compete for the BMF title. I don't see what else is out there for Islam. He's not going to be fighting. I see online, we'll have him fight Leon Edwards for the welterweight championship. No, that's not happening. The UFC is not going to do that. Colby Covington is getting a title fight, doesn't deserve it, but he'll get it. They want him to have it. They think he sells. That's the way they're going to go. Dariush just lost his fight. Chandler is waiting in the wings for the Conor McGregor fight. Fiziev is coming off a loss. Gamrot, Arman. I don't see an easy solution. So to me, it has to be Volk, and it's the fight that sells and makes the most sense. And Volk at featherweight, Ilya Topuria, can sit and wait on his spot. Sergey Pavlovich is doing that right now in the heavyweight division. This weekend, Dana White announced in November, Madison Square Garden at the Mecca, John Jones is fighting Stipe Miocic. Finally, that fight's going to happen. The greatest light heavyweight of all time and the greatest heavyweight of all time will step into the cage for the heavyweight title. Now, both of them are older. It's not what it could have been years ago, but I'm still excited for the fight. So, sometimes it's just names in box office, and for this one, it makes the most sense because there's not another title challenger who's going to be ready, who's going to be prepared. Ilya Topuria, Pavlovich, they know title opportunities are on the horizon. So they can have the luxury of just sitting there and waiting for that to come. Ilya said this on Ariel Helwani's MMA Hour last week. He said, I will fight in Spain or I'll fight for the title. Now, it's difficult because sometimes you want a payday and you want to get another check for fighting. I understand that completely. Now, I don't know who they'll want Ilya to fight in Spain. I don't think it's a smart thing for him to fight Max Holloway. Not that he can't beat Max Holloway, but Max Holloway is still at the top of his game, and Holloway is fighting at the end of August against Zombies. He may not be ready to fight. This may only happen in 2024. Maybe it's a pay-per-view event in Spain. And you have Volk fight Islam in October, and he could fight in February. He loves to be active. He talks about it all the time. And you have Ilya versus him in February in Spain for the championship. For matchmakers who did a great job this weekend, by the way, Mick Maynard, Sean Shelby, it's a thankless position. But they put on some great fights. It's a difficult job, but they killed this weekend. I wouldn't want Ilya Topuria to fight again. And the risk is if he loses, then you're losing challengers. Arnold Allen lost to Max Holloway. He's lost some of the luster about him. Max Holloway's not going to fight for the title again. Brian Ortega hasn't fought in forever. Are you going to put Ilya Topuria against Arnold Allen? That's a disaster. You don't want that to happen. He's fought Josh Emmett. I don't know. From the UFC, if you can get an event done in Spain, do it, but I'd set it up for next year so that Topuria can fight Volkanovski for the featherweight title, say February, March. Because otherwise, you got problems. Unless there's another interim situation, which maybe Volk wouldn't mind. He didn't mind the first time he fought Yair Rodriguez and he beat the hell out of him Saturday night. If they did Topuria versus Arnold Allen for the interim title, that I wouldn't mind. Have that in Spain this year if you want to do it. That wouldn't bother me because I think both guys are really good fighters. Topuria's never lost. Arnold Allen has only lost to Max frickin' Holloway. But there's no shame in that. Arnold's beaten Dan Hooker. He's beaten Calvin Kattar. Yusuf. He's beaten some good guys in the UFC. So those are some of the possibilities they can go down. And I think Topuria looked really good a couple weeks ago in Jacksonville. Really good in dominating Josh Emmett, who's a very game fighter. But do I know? I thought Yair had a decent chance this weekend of at least giving Volk a test, and he never even did that. Wasn't close. It was just Volk doing whatever he wanted to do the entire night. And Topuria, to Volk's point, he made this after. He said, Yair is a lot more creative and has a lot more ways to beat me than Ilya does. And I think that's a fair comment because Ilya can submit you. He can beat you with boxing. He's so unorthodox. He's got a lot of creativity. He's got a lot of different ways to finish you. Where I think Ilya is a little more set in what he wants to do. But if I'm Dana White, I'm checking in on Volk, saying, get the surgery now. Do you want to fight in October? That's my approach because we want that Abu Dhabi card to be awesome. If we can get you and Islam, if we can get Kanayir and the Wolf, Hamzat Chimaev at 185, that'd be fantastic. And they got to figure out some business because the welterweight division's interesting right now because when is Leon going to fight Colby? On what card? Are they going to do 2 title fights in New York? I think they would like to get Colby in New York, potentially. Does Kamaru Usman fight on that card? I think that'd be smart if they did that. I don't know. Books. Would he fight Sean? I doubt he'd fight Sean Brady. He doesn't have a whole lot of fights that make sense for him right now. But they got a lot of business to do. It's a tough position, but Volk is, key point here, Alexander Volkanovski is one of the best fighters in UFC history. Doesn't have a whole lot of weaknesses, and he seems to be getting better with age, which is pretty crazy. The co-main event was a flyweight title fight between Alexander Pantoja and Brandon Moreno. This fight had intrigue because Brandon Moreno is the champion, but Pantoja is 2-0 in his career against Brandon Moreno. Pantoja beat him in The Ultimate Fighter and then beat him on a fight night in 2018. Since then, Pantoja had suffered some losses. Brandon Moreno was cut from the UFC, then brought back in and has gone through wars with Davison Figueiredo and has been a 2-time flyweight champion. The flyweights can hardly ever get the luster, get the praise of the masses when it comes to their fights. This division was at one point out of the UFC, 125 pounds. But they put on some of the most electric and some of the most fun and entertaining fights. Brandon Moreno and Davison Figueiredo, the first fight to me is a top 5. It was razor thin. It was ruled a draw. Second fight was really good. The third fight, that quadrilogy was superb. And Brandon Moreno, to his credit, every time he's in the cage, puts on a good show. It's always an entertaining fight. And this was another awesome bout. It won fight of the night. And it was close. It could have went either way, but I felt the right person won. First round, I gave to Pantoja. He had big shots. He came out with his boxing. He got Brandon Moreno to the ground, and he used a lot of energy. And he was showing all his skills, and it looked like he thought he could beat Brandon Moreno in the first round. It really did. So that was concerning. Second round, it was Brandon Moreno. His jab was working. He was landed bigger shots, and Pantoja looked like he was tired. Looks like he couldn't keep up. His cardio was lagging. So 1-1. Third round, credit to Alexander Pantoja, because he looks like he's dying in the cage, not just from his face and the abuse, but just his overall cardio. He's breathing heavy. But in the third round, he knew what he had to do. He got 2 takedowns. He controlled Brandon Moreno, and he limited the damage. He kept him on the ground. He put him in positions where he had ground control time. And he tried to preserve some energy, in my opinion, where he just had control. It would have been hard to rule Moreno winning those rounds. Fourth, super close. Both guys were landing good shots. But again, Pantoja landed takedowns, had control. I give him the fourth, and I gave him the fifth. So I ruled it 4-1 in favor of Alexander Pantoja. It was a split decision. One judge had it 49-46 Moreno, which was crazy to me. And judging is all over the place in mixed martial arts right now. But at the end of the day, Pantoja beats Moreno, and he becomes the new flyweight champion. It was a great moment. He's crying in the cage. His wife and kids come in. You see fellow Brazilians like Glover Teixeira, Gilbert Burns really celebrate with him, crying in the stands to see him win the title. And it was an awesome fight. Great action throughout. Moreno's a gamer. He never backs down. And Pantoja looked like he was dead throughout the whole fight. Looked like he was going to be gassed out. I thought after that first round, is he going to have the energy to keep going? But he found it. He found enough to do it. He found enough energy to persevere. And we learned after the fight, Moreno broke his hand. You see him in a cast already. Both men were battered to hell. And Moreno has been at the top of the flyweight division for some time. As I mentioned, he fought Figueiredo a bunch of times. He fought Kai Kara France. But now there's a new man at the top of the throne. Brandon Royval weighed in for this fight. He wants to be the next man up. Dana White didn't guarantee him that. So he could still be waiting in the wings. It wouldn't surprise me if they run it back with Moreno and Pantoja. It would be for the fourth time. And Moreno's lost all 3. So that hurts that chance. But it was such an entertaining fight that nobody would be disappointed to see it again. Sometimes that's all it takes for the person that loses. Was it fun? And it was. Fight of the night, everything. Plus, Pantoja has beaten Brandon Royval too. Beat him in the first round. Beat him easily. So we go, well, he could fight Royval again. And he submitted him in the second round, a minute 46 in. He beat Alex Perez in the first round. These are his last few fights. Perez is ranked 7th. Royval is ranked 4th. Albazi just beat Kara France. Most people think he lost that fight. Davison Figueiredo is number 1 in the rankings. He's going to flyweight. He's reportedly going to be fighting former bantamweight champion Dominic Cruz in September. So I don't think either of these guys are going to be fighting in the near future. They're going to need some recovery time. They're going to need to heal up. But could, on the December card, let's say, it's always a December card at T-Mobile, could this be a co-main event at that card? Yeah. Or maybe in December you have Leon Edwards and Colby Covington, unless they want to do that in New York. Or it's the light heavyweight title between Yuri Prohaska and Jamal Hill, and you have this as the co-main. That's a possibility as well. But these flyweights, man, they fly around the cage. They got crazy energy. They throw so hard for guys that are that small. And they show up and show out every time they get in there. That's the incredible thing about them, is that they're just so fun. Constant movement, constant energy. So this deserved fight of the night. This was phenomenal and a great moment for Alexander Pantoja. Third fight on the main card. This third fight was a main event on a fight night, easy. This is a co-main event on most cards, but you have a stacked lineup. Dricus du Plessis versus Robert Whittaker. I was open in saying I thought this was a stupid thing from the UFC to do. Dricus du Plessis is undefeated. He's 5-0 in the UFC. But he's got a story with Izzy, the current champion at 185, Israel Adesanya. They hate each other. It's a beef that is very cringy. It's over their African heritage. Israel Adesanya being black, Dricus du Plessis being white. Dricus always bringing up that he's the real African, that Izzy is not. He lives in South Africa. And it's an uncomfortable whenever you hear it talked about. And you had that hatred. Izzy said he wants to beat the hell out of him in the cage, but they decide to do this. Dricus versus Robert Whittaker, because Robert Whittaker's beaten everybody else in the division. So let's do this. But boy, was I wrong. DDP, who got surgery on his nose because he wasn't breathing correctly for this entirety of his UFC career, so he got that fixed up, gets in the cage and dominates Robert Whittaker. Dominates him. The striking, his strength, bringing him to the ground, it was all on display. His ability to switch stances. And Whittaker looked like he was swinging for the fences, trying to get a one-punch knockout and getting out and being lucky to get a win. Dricus was calculated. He had a game plan. And what they're doing in South Africa, it's working. Cameron Saman had a first-round TKO of Terrence Mitchell earlier in the night. He's undefeated. He's 9-0. He's really good in bantamweight. But Dricus, the pace, he's improving. He looks like a monster of a man at 185 pounds. It's like Alex Pereira, where Alex Pereira was fighting at 185, but he walks around 230, 240 pounds. He has to cut so much weight to get to 185, and on fight night, he's weighing 220, 225. Dricus he looks so much bigger than Robert. And Robert looked like he was in really good shape, looked like he was lifting weights more than he ever have, but it was no chance. Dricus punches so hard, he got him to the ground, he gets control, and he made a statement. Under 2 rounds, he beats the Reaper, Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker, who his only losses in the middleweight division until Saturday night were to Israel Adesanya. He's beaten Vettori. He's beaten Kelvin Gastelum, beaten Jared Cannonier, beaten Darren Till, Yoel Romero, twice, Derek Brunson, Uriah Hall, Brad Tavares. He was a king. But 2 minutes and 23 seconds into round 2, Dricus finished the fight. And Dricus didn't take that much damage. Israel Adesanya came to the cage. It was more cringy stuff where he's saying the N-word to Dricus. And Israel is cringy, very cringy in his own right. And he likes to make things personal. I think he needs to get it there to be motivated. But we needed a main event for UFC 293 in Sydney in early September. We got one. Dricus v. Israel for the middleweight title. Israel's home away from home. He's loved in Sydney with his partnerships with Alexander Volkanovski, the fact that they're teammates. But Dricus is the real deal, beating the second best middleweight of his era in Robert Whittaker. And he pulled it out. He came out and dominated and looked fantastic. And I think this main event's going to be really fun. We have 2 months to build it up. 2 months for each man to hate each other more and more. To want to win just so the other doesn't. And Dricus creates problems for Izzy because he's so big and he's so strong. And Izzy's never been a guy that's been totally comfortable on the ground. Well, I don't think Dricus is going to be afraid to bring him to the ground because he's beaten Derek Brunson that way and he's beaten Robert Whittaker in those his last 2 wins. Punches getting to the ground. So incredibly impressive from him. Now my thought is Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker is one of the best of his generation. No denying it. But where does he go from here? This was his opportunity to get another crack at the title. He's 32 years old. I just don't know what happens for him. He needs to go back to the drawing board, but does he? Cannonier is going to have another fight. He's beaten Vettori recently. Paulo Costa's fighting. He hasn't fought Sean Strickland. That could be an interesting fight. But my wonder is he motivated? He's going to be continued to motivate because does he believe he can get back to the title? What fight does he want at 185? He's 32. He's not an old man by any means. But is this it for him? Is this it for him? Does he want to retire? It wouldn't totally surprise me because it was not close on Saturday night. Would he take a Sean Strickland fight later in the year? I think it would be good for both men. I mean, Whittaker, Paulo Costa's fighting in July. Would he fight him late down the road, later in 2023? There's a lot of questions to be answered for sure for Robert Whittaker, because we've never seen him be dominated like he was on Saturday. The rest of the main card, Dan Hooker fought Jalen Turner. What a war. Thought Turner won round one easily, but the next two were Dan Hooker's rounds. His striking, his cardio was there. He's had such an interesting career because it looked like he was falling off. He was dominated by Michael Chandler. Chandler's debut in UFC wasn't close. He was dominated by Arnold Allen. Was dominated by Islam. And just like, okay, well, Dan Hooker is on the tail end here. But he beat Claudio Puelles back in November. Then he fights the tarantula, Jalen Turner, one of the biggest lightweights in the division, and he gets a win. And he jumps to number 11 in the lightweight rankings. He did break his arm during the fight. So that's going to be, he'll have some recovery time for that, to recover from a broken arm. But the way he battled through it, that's just Dan Hooker. And I'll say at the top, you see Islam, you don't see a whole lot of title challengers. You see Dustin, who's been there forever, Justin Gaethje. But the lightweight division is becoming more interesting. Matt Pervola at 15 is a rising contender. Renato Moicano, we have not seen fight in a long time, but he's a good fighter. Jalen Turner, still good. Dan Hooker. Grant Dawson, who won 2 weeks ago. The dude is a surging contender. Has every part of his game up, just completely locked in. He's at number 10. He's awesome. RDA, Rafael Dos Anjos, he's getting older. Still a really good fighter, however. He's fighting in August. Armin Tuskarian won a few weeks ago. He looks good. Gamrot is always, pardon the pun, game. Fiziev, yes, he's coming off a loss, but it's to Justin Gaethje. He still is hype. He's still very good. Michael Chandler at number 5. He'd be getting a big fight if he wasn't waiting for Conor McGregor and his bullshit right now with USADA and waiting to get so he can pass a test for steroids. Dariush just lost a number 1 contender fight, but he's very game. And Gaethje and Poirier are fighting. So this division has some really good contenders in it. It's starting to stockpile. And Dan Hooker, who's a veteran, who's fought a lot in his professional career, still can bring it. And this was the 4th fight on the main card, and it was phenomenal. Opening the pay-per-view was Bo Nickel. Another guy I needed to see more from. We know he's the 3-time national champion wrestler. But that doesn't mean you're going to be a really good MMA fighter. Okay, you can get the guys to the ground. He was supposed to fight Tresean Gore. He had to pull out with an injury. So he fought Woodburn on 3 days' notice. But the impressive thing was not the fact that he beat a guy on 3 days' notice. I expected him to win quite easily. It was the fact that he beat him in 38 seconds, and he beat him with his boxing. Huge right hands, cracking him. And Bo Nickel wins in 38 seconds. Started his career in March, beat Jamie Pickett in 2 minutes and 54 seconds. He wins in 38 seconds on Saturday night. Dana White says they're going to slow play him. They don't want to feed him to the big contenders yet in the middleweight division. I think that's smart. Because a big name could have stepped in, but they didn't. Because I don't think a lot of guys, in my opinion, believe they can't beat him. They look at him and go, I don't know if I can beat him. Now he goes up to 15th on the UFC site. I'm looking for Bo Nickel here. He's 36th in the rankings currently. He'll move up because he won his fight, I believe. Yeah, it hasn't counted his last win yet. But he gets a win at 36. Names above him, you have Marc-Andre Barrio, who's coming off a win over Eric Anders and Julian Marquez. He's won 2 in a row. That would be a good test for Bo Nickel. Barrio's a very good fighter. There's Gregory Rodriguez, Bruno Ferreira, good fighter. Anthony Hernandez would be fun, but he's won a lot of fights in a row. Joe Pfeiffer, that I don't think they'll put either of those. I think they view both guys as contenders, big surging contenders. If I'm booking Bo Nickel, you want him to fight guys that are not highly ranked, but I do think have some hype around them for sure, because you just don't want it to be one-way traffic. I think Marc-Andre Barrio would be a good opponent for him next. They're close in the rankings. Barrio's won 2 fights in a row. Andre Petrosky would be fun as well. But there's some options. But to me, he's proving every time he gets in the octagon that he's getting better at every skill. He needs to work on his mic skills. Like, and he has hype because the UFC loves him. I think people just view him as this top prospect. But, call out some opponents, be a little bit more engaged. That would be my one thing for him, is just to get even more hype, even more popularity around your name going forward. Also in the night, Robbie Lawler, his retirement fight. It couldn't have ended much better for him. He didn't take a punch, and he won it 38 seconds into the battle with Nico Price. Huge overhand right into an uppercut, into another overhand right, just completely dropped him. A former champion, a legend of the game, and he hadn't looked that good in a very long time. But he does it on the prelims on ABC. They show a video of his career. He tears up. And it was an awesome moment. He was in the Hall of Fame wing this weekend for his fight with Rory McDonald, which is when he won the title, one of the best fights in UFC history. But Robbie Lawler has done a whole lot. He's 30-16 in his career. There's been a lot of fights. But your last win was in 2021 against Nick Diaz, and that was a weird fight. But he's lost to Neil Magny recently, lost to Colby Covington, lost to Ben Askren. More losses than wins recently. But that fight in 2015 against Rory McDonald was... he's fought Johnny Hendricks, who was really good. He's beaten Matt Brown. He's had a great career, and he goes out the right way. Most athletes do not get to go out like he does, with no injuries and a good payday on the way out, and getting that moment in front of the Vegas crowd. Alonzo Menafield got a big win over Jimmy Crute. I mentioned Cameron Saman, the surging 22-year-old bantamweight contender, improved to 9-0 in his professional career. And also, I mentioned that there's some fight announcements this weekend. The Mecca UFC 295, John Jones, Stipe Miocic. In Sydney, a fight added to that card, a fellow Aussie, Bam Bam, aka Tai Tuivasa, will be fighting Alexander Volkov in the heavyweight division. I like this for both fighters. Bam Bam's coming off 2 losses in a row. The UFC knows they can't have him in there with wrestlers, with grapplers. They want him to sit there and throw. Volkov's going to do that. They're number 6 and number 7 in the rankings, respectively. And he'll get a pop. He gets to fight at home. Hasn't fought since December. So a fun fight. I think either of these guys would have been a better matchup for Tom Aspinall in 2 weeks, but that's neither here nor there. And Marlon Chito Vera was supposed to fight Henry Cejudo in Boston in mid-August. But Henry had to pull out because of a shoulder injury. So Chito wanted to stay on the card. He wanted to fight, and he has a new opponent. Stepping in to fight him is Pedro Munoz, a veteran of the UFC. And I think this is really a smart play from Pedro Munoz. Chito Vera is 6th in the rankings. He's coming off a loss to Corey Sandhagen. He was going to fight Cejudo, who's number 3. So you get that win, you get put back into the discussion for a title opportunity. But Chito's coming off a loss where he was dominated. Pedro Munoz is coming off a great win over Chris Gutierrez. But you're Pedro, you go, I'm 10th in the rankings. I've had an up and down career. He had the tough fight with O'Malley where he had the eye injury. Lost to Dominic Cruz recently. Lost to Jose Aldo. But you're in the rankings and you look really good against Chris Gutierrez. But at year 10, with a win, you could jump to 6th in the rankings. Jump Dominic Cruz, jump Song Yadong, jump Rob Font, and be nearly in the top 5. This makes all the sense in the world. Plus, Chito is an opponent that you know what he's going to do. He's trying to knock you out. And otherwise, he can't beat you. On the ground, he's not going to beat you. He doesn't wrestle. He doesn't grapple. That's not the way he approaches it. So it's an easier opponent to game plan for than, say, a Henry Cejudo or getting in there with somebody who's just a 5'2" player. But for Pedro, you look at the situation. This is where we are. I can get to number 6 in the rankings with this win, with another fight. I'm in the discussion for a title opportunity. So for him to step up and to take this, love it. Love it. It's a smart business decision. You get on a big card. Who knows? This could be the 2nd to 3rd fight on the main card pay-per-view. Maybe number 3 because they do have 2 title fights announced for that event. But I could see this being number 3, like the Whitaker spot this weekend. And you're in that position, you're in good shape. You got eyeballs on, you got people watching. Now, there are some good fights. Jeff Neal, Ian Gary will be on the main card. I imagine Chris Weidman and Brad Tavares. Maybe they'll put, that might be a prelim. Cody Garbrandt, Gerald Mearshart, Rob Font, Song Yadong is another bantamweight fight on that card, which is awesome. I mean, the card in Boston is stacking up to be really, really good. But it has that fight. I think will be on the main card. So you get another more eyeballs and spotlight in your own right with that. But it was, we've talked 50 minutes about the UFC. I apologize if you don't like the Ultimate Fighting Championship, but I do, and it's summer. But also, it's a growing sport. It's fascinating. You see the controversies, and Dana White talked about this, and I don't agree with everything Dana White does, personally or professionally. But a reporter asked him about Israel Adesanya getting in the cage with Dricus du Plessis and with Izzy calling him the N-word and being really inappropriate, quite frankly. But the UFC is different because it doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter what the perception of it is because it's fighting. It's fighting, and the social norms, the etiquette that we'd have in daily conversations, that we have in hockey, that we have in football, basketball, what have you, they're thrown out the window. Because fighting is its own entity. You might not like that there's cringiness and there's racial undertones and there's infighting and this, that, or the other thing. But it's what it's been built on. It's always been cringe. It's always been this, what are we doing here? Should we be talking about this? But they don't care. And everybody understands that, which makes it okay, in my opinion, that it's just universally known, this is how it's done here. And it's nice that it's not, where we are in life right now, where everything has to be censored, where everything has to be, are we allowed to say this? Can we do that? Who knows? It's a complete unknown. We don't know what we can do on a daily basis. We don't know what we can put on social media. We don't know what we can watch. We don't know what we can say. But Dana White said, who said it? Israel. Israel's black. He called Dricus, a white guy, the N-word. I'm okay with that. Like Dana said he is, I'm okay with it too. Because guess what? White people don't get the right to say that word. Ever, in my opinion. Ever, ever, ever. But can black people say it? Yes. And that might sound foreign to some people, but to me it makes all the sense in the world. You're not black. You don't get the right to say it. You're black? Say it. Because that's just the way it is. Let's move to tennis. Wimbledon's been a lot of fun so far. A lot of interesting matches. A lot of great action at the All England Club. There's a lot of things we could discuss here Monday. I mean, a lot of tennis has been played today. Every women's match is over. Madison Keys had a great comeback. Alina Rybakina, who's last year's champion, advanced on a walkover. Sabalenka, who has been phenomenal this season, is into her first career Wimbledon quarterfinal. And Ons Jabeur, who made the finals last year, advanced in 2 quick sets over two-time Wimbledon champion Petra Kvitova this morning. And what I find so interesting, in particular, this half of the women's draw. On Wednesday, we're going to get Ons Jabeur and Alina Rybakina in the quarterfinal, which will be a rematch of last year's Wimbledon final. They're in the same half of the draw. Rybakina, who's been phenomenal this season, had to pull out of the French because she was ill, but otherwise she lost in the Australian Open final. She won Indian Wells. She made it to the semifinal at the Miami Open. Jabeur, who's won 2 events this year. You have Sabalenka, who's won 2 events this year, including a major semifinal at the French Open. This half of the women's draw is loaded with talent. Loaded with big names and loaded with women who have been the best this year on tour, minus Iga Swiatek. But you have Sabalenka against Madison Keys. who can either find her game or fall off quickly. It looked like she was down this morning. She was down 6-3, 3-love, and she found a way to come back and win the match. That's perseverance. That's finding a way to get it done with her incredible serve. But I look at the women here. Rybakina, Sabalenka, Jabber, they all do it differently. Sabalenka's the power game. Her serve, first and foremost, make everything so difficult for an opponent. It's hard to return her serve. Rybakina has a good serve as well. But she is just she finds ways to finish rallies quickly. She forces her opponents to make mistakes. And Jabber's just the jack of all trades, where she keeps balls in play, she makes life difficult, and she's been to multiple finals at majors, but hasn't broken through yet. So Keys is the outlier at 25th in the rankings, but you have Jabber at 6, Sabalenka at 2, and Rybakina at 3. But all 4 of these women have either been to a Grand Slam final or have won a Grand Slam. It's pretty incredible to have these 4 remaining on the draw, and only one of them will get to the final. We'll only get to it. On the other half of the draw, you have 2 unranked women, Alina Svitolina, who won an awesome... Yesterday afternoon, if you weren't watching tennis, I feel bad for you. Svitolina and Azarenka, the 2 remaining mothers in the draw, battled it out, 3rd set tiebreak. Svitolina pulled it out. At the same time, Iga Swiatek was playing Belinda Bencic, a former Wimbledon semifinalist. And Swiatek lost the first set in a tiebreak, and serving at 4-5, she was 15-40 with Bencic with 2 match points. And she fought them off, and she ended up winning the match. She's won 4 majors, 3 French Opens, and 1 US Open at this point in her career. And she's still very young. But I'm wondering if that's a turning point for her, where 1 hard court, 3 on the clay. So we know what she's best at. But she's on grass, not her best surface, and she finds a way to win that match. She finds a way to battle it out. That's impressive to me, because she's playing a game Bencic who is playing fantastic, and she finds a way through it. And now with that win, she gets Svitolina, who's unranked, who she can't look past, but on paper, she's the world number 1. You are in the driver's seat. On the other side, you have Jessica Pegula, who's number 4, who's looked very good throughout these championships, and Marketa Vondrousova, who's in her first career major quarterfinal. So you have a 50-50 chance of your 2 quarterfinal and semifinal matches being against women who are not ranked, meaning you are a massive betting favorite. And Pegula, who has not been to a Grand Slam final yet. I just see improvement in her game in all facets, where she would have lost that match on grass a couple years ago. She just would. She'd find a way to lose that match, find a way not to be able to get through. But now she's improved. I think she's looking at every major that she should be the favorite. She's the world number 1, and she's the best female tennis player in the world. And she is. She is. So, to me, the women's draw this year, in particular here, the women's tennis has been phenomenal. On the men's draw, Denis Shapovalov dropped a match that on paper he should have won yesterday. But early in the contest, you could tell, I knew he won the first set, and I still thought he was going to lose this match. Stupid errors. He had multiple opportunities in the second set to break Safulin, and he didn't. Just couldn't do it. Errors, costly mistakes, and typical Denis Shapovalov tennis, where he just didn't take advantage. and he loses against an unranked opponent, that's a huge loss. But today, one of the best stories of the draw is Christopher Eubanks, an unranked American, was 150th in the world earlier this year, beat Stefanos Tsitsipas this morning in 5 sets to advance to his first career major quarterfinal, where he draws Daniil Medvedev. But Eubanks he's every time, he's beat Cameron Norrie, a 12 seed in the second round in 4 sets. Playing a guy from England beats him, beats O'Connell, 3 tie breaks in the third round. He beats Tsitsipas this morning, the world number 5. The crowd is behind him. He's got a great personality. He's a great interview. He's got personality. I like him a lot. I think he's great for the game of tennis. And he's been a gamer from the start here. He looks dialed in. He's fantastic. And he gets Medvedev, who has never been great on grass, but he's into a quarterfinal. He won 2 sets this morning, and then Lecheka pulled out, so he advances via a walkover. He looks really good. So you have Medvedev, Eubanks. We're still waiting on the other 2 quarterfinal match. We're 2 round of 16s. You have Grigor Dimitrov, who's playing Holger Rune currently. Rune's played a lot of tennis, played a lot of, like Tsitsipas. To me, Tsitsipas kind of ran out of gas. He played 2 5-round matches in his first 2 rounds. The Andy Murray match was 2 days. It took a lot out of him. And I just think you get into another 5-set match, Eubanks had more stamina. Grigor has played a lot less tennis throughout this than Rune, but Rune he's 20, he's young, and he's game at every major. He comes in ready to play. But to me, Dimitrov's looked fantastic. Bounced TFO in 3 easy sets. Also this afternoon, you have Carlos Alcaraz against Matteo Berrettini. Here's my prediction for that. I think Berrettini's going to beat the world number 1. Berrettini's unranked because he had some injuries. He's gone through some stuff. His best surface is grass. He's been to a Wimbledon final. He has a great serve. He played great against Sasha Zverev on Saturday. Beat him in straight sets. To me, Berrettini is going to win that match today. He's going to beat Carlos Alcaraz, and he will be... To me, he's playing as good as anybody in this half of the draw. The other, you have Sinner, who's playing Safulin. Sinner's young. That's no easy win, in my opinion, for him because he finds ways to lose matches. And you have Andrei Rublev playing Novak Djokovic. Rublev's another guy. He played 5-set match yesterday. Found a way to beat Bublik. Novak went late yesterday, so he could only play 2 sets. He lost the 3rd set this morning, won it in the 4th. I don't know if that match can be close. I think Novak, to me, I'd be shocked if Novak doesn't get to the final. With this draw, the way it's looking, it's very push. It's very posh for him. And to be quite frank, Novak should be the favorite to win the championship. Like he was before, he's still playing. Novak Djokovic is the favorite. He's the best tennis player in the world. But the action has been a lot of fun. Some really good tennis. Some interesting matchups still to come today. So that'll be my sports consumption over the next couple days, is watching the championships Wimbledon when everything else is on hiatus. Let's get to hockey. Alex Debrincat has been on the market for a couple weeks. We've known this. Didn't want to sign a contract in Ottawa. We thought he might be dealt before the draft. But he had made it known that he didn't want to be in Ottawa anymore and he was going to go to salary arbitration with the team. I thought the Dallas Stars have been a good fit for Debrincat. They could use another scoring winger. They didn't have the money. It would have been difficult to pull off that trade. So they grabbed Matt Duchene. But Debrincat doesn't want to be in Ottawa. So late last night, in a Sunday night news dump that I did not expect, Alex Debrincat is traded to the Detroit Red Wings. Excuse me. A team inside the division, which is not ideal. And in return, Ottawa gets winger Dominic Kubalik, who's been in the NHL a minute, prospect Donovan Sabrango, who you might remember from the World Junior team a number of years ago, a conditional 2024 first-round pick, which will either be Detroit's or Boston's that they got a few years ago, depending on where the teams finish in the standings, and a 2024 fourth-round pick. So, what do we make of this? We learned after the fact that Alex Debrincat was only going to go to Detroit. He only wanted to go to Detroit. He's a Michigan native, and Ottawa wanted to get the most that they could in return. So when he's traded, Detroit then re-signed him to a 4-year deal at $7.875 million AAV. So they lock him up for 4 years to be a winger on their team. I like Alex Debrincat. I do. I think he's a good player. However, I think he benefited from playing with Patrick Kane for a long time. Kane put the puck right in the middle of the stick. He put it in the back of the net. Now, you can't score the goal, even if you get a great pass. You got to be able to finish. But I look at Detroit. They re-signed Dylan Larkin, who's a good player. I don't think he's a number one center, but he's very good. You have Debrincat, Lucas Raymond, good player. My boy Mo Sider. Philly Husso, Andrew Kopp, who they signed last offseason, David Perron. They got JT Compher at the free agent frenzy. Daniel Sprong, Justin Hall, Sherratt, Gostisbehere, Clem Costin, who they got from Edmonton. It's a good team. It's a good team, no doubt about it. But how good is it, is my question. This trade and the moves that they made, I think Detroit is trying to signal that they want to be competitive, which I don't blame them because they haven't been competitive in a long time. But with this Debrincat trade and getting Husso and adding Justin Hall, is Detroit better than the Toronto Maple Leafs? No. Are they better than Tampa Bay? No. Are they better than Buffalo, in my opinion? No. Are they better than Ottawa? Even with Debrincat, you make this trade with the Senators? No. You're better than Montreal? Great. Florida made the Stanley Cup final last year. Florida is the team that I don't know what to say about them because I think they're going to be so battered and injured that I don't have a whole lot of expectations for the team. Because they may not have anything left. Boston, I need to wait to see the rest of their offseason, but they need to make decisions and they need to find center iceman, but I expect them to do that. I like what Detroit's trying to do. I like Dylan Larkin as a player. Philly Husso is a good goalie. Marco Kasper, to me, is going to be a really good draft pick. You got Simon Edvinsson. You have young pieces. But they're young pieces. They need time to grow. But the thing for Detroit, they've missed the playoffs the last 8 years after making it for 22 in a row. And Detroit is not a hotbed for sports where I don't think people aren't going unless it's a really good team. They're not getting great ticket sales to go to these games. So it's just, I don't know. I don't love what's happening here. Debrincat only wanted to go to Detroit, so he held all the cards. And I don't think Ottawa got a great return. That's not even my beef with this. And I don't think they're 4 years, 7.875. That's fair to me. That's not a bad contract. So this isn't about Debrincat, and it's more about Steve Yzerman. I like what Steve Yzerman has done drafting, for the most part. Zadina excluded. I think Sider's a great player. I think Casper's going to be a great player. Simon Edvinsson remains to be seen, but I like him. Lucas Ryman's been really good. But their signings in the offseason, you were signing guys that are available. I get that. You can only sign free agents that are free. But the Compers, the Justin Halls, these Andrew Kopps, they're not top-line players. And I think they're overpaying a lot of them. Compher got $5 million. Compher is, to me, he's not a $5 million player. I think he's very good, but is he a $5 million player? Probably not. They gave Andrew Kopp a lot of years, and I like Andrew Kopp. And I think Andrew Kopp can be a really good third-line center on a championship contending team, but in Detroit, he has to be number 2. Maybe not. They expect Compher to be that this year, but Dylan Larkin, to me, isn't a number 1. Mo Sider has worse numbers year over year because he's asked to do way too much. It's the mistake teams make. I say this in Dallas all the time about Heiskanen. Stop asking him to do everything. Because eventually he's just going to run out of gas. Ben Sherratt, they gave him multiple years. Robert Hagg, okay. Olli Mata, Osterley, these defense core. And their goaltending with Husso and Alex Nedeljkovic, not exactly stellar. So they add some scoring, and they don't have to give up a whole lot for it. So I don't blame them in doing that. Kubalik is a guy who came over late. He came over to play in North America. How old is he now? I know he's not a youngster. He was one of those guys that came over as a 25-year-old after playing multiple years, many years overseas, and he got a look from Chicago, had a huge year, and turned that into a contract. He's 27. And his first year over here in 2019-20, he had 30 goals and 46 points in 68 games. Since then, he scored 17, 15, and 20. Okay? So he's not a game changer. He's a 20-goal scorer, if that. Donovan Sabrango, an Ottawa native. He's 21. Defensive defenseman who has not played an NHL game yet. Now, that could be Detroit. They are very protective of defensemen, which I don't blame them. But he hasn't played an NHL game yet, so he's a prospect. It's not a win trade for the Ottawa Senators. They didn't get much. He was affected by COVID, as I'm reading here. He's 135 games of AHL experience. Played in the ECHL some of last year. I don't expect him to be in the NHL next year to help this Ottawa defense corps. And conditional first, Ottawa gets to move on. from Debrincat. We also kind of need to replace that goal scoring. They added Zach McEwen. So they added a winger last week, but Zach McEwen he's a fourth line player. He's a big body in a division full of tough guys with Lucic and Reeves and everything else. You want to stay up to par with the rest of the division. So you had a guy with some toughness, with a guy who's a little rugged. No problem with that. But Ottawa knew that. I don't think they had to trade Debrincat. To me, he's not holding out. If he knows he's going to make a good check. So you trade a player in division and you have to see him for the next 4 years. Good for Debrincat for getting what he wanted. I mean, that's kudos to him because that didn't have to happen, but it did. And he gets himself to Detroit. He's from Michigan. He gets to play for his hometown team. I'm sure the team he grew up loving. Ottawa, they added some good players. They have a goalie. They got Chychrun. Maybe it's been rumored they want to add Vladimir Tarasenko. I've never been the biggest Vladimir Tarasenko fan, but here's the thing: it's July 10th, and he's unsigned. Do you know what that means? We're getting you for very little money. That's my stipulation. We'll sign you. But if I'm the Ottawa Senators, there is no way I'm paying more than $3 million for Vladimir Tarasenko. That might sound crazy, but it isn't. Nobody wants you. Nobody wants to pay you. Nobody believes in your fragile body. So guess what? You're going to take what we have to offer you, which isn't much. But would I take a flyer on Vladimir Tarasenko to help me as a guy who could score on the wing for a small amount of money? Yeah. How about a 1-year, $2 million deal for Vlad Tarasenko? He gets to go play 1 year here in Ottawa and have a big payday next time around. He's 31. If he could have a great year and then turn it into a 4-year deal after this season, that might be what it takes for him to get a big payday on the line. I mean, still the remaining free agents, you get Tarasenko, Tatar, Matt Dumba, Taves, Patrick Kane, Phil Kessel, Caleb Jones, Ethan Bear, Max Comtois. There's not a whole lot of names that excite you, but Tarasenko, Dumba are names that make sense. Philip Zadina is also out there after being bought out by the Detroit Red Wings. I think a team will take a flyer on him. Also, NHL news, Anze Kopitar signed a 2-year, $14 million extension with the Los Angeles Kings. Another reason for Maple Leafs fans to be happy with this, that Matthews isn't going anywhere, because I think he would have went to LA if he was leaving Toronto. No reporting on that, just a hunch, just a feeling that I think he would like the LA lifestyle with the heat and the weather and the fashion. But maybe he just loves being a Maple Leaf. Oh, the narcissism of some fans, eh? It's something else. I've had this discussion before here, but does it not mean something for you to be a Bruin? Does it not mean something for you to be a Maple Leaf? Does Does it not mean anything for you to be a cowboy? What does that even mean? We're all just out here in the world trying to make a buck. And I think overcomplicating it, trying to get somebody to buy into a culture or buy into this sense of Looney Tune fantasy land is not the way to go about approaching signing a free agent. That's just some advice to other media members in certain cities and just overall people around the world. I'm just trying to help you here on a Monday. Monday motivation or Monday, just a Monday thoughts with Noah. Just, how about if a player wants to play somewhere, he goes to play there? Alex Debrincat's from Detroit. He wanted to play in Detroit, he goes to Detroit. How many other people are going to make that decision? Not many. You know why? Because they aren't from Detroit and they don't know what it's like there. And there's, we know about crime and weather and everything else in Detroit. So people don't want to go there. He's lived in Detroit, so he has this warm feel for Detroit. That's why he wants to go there. John Tavares, Pajama Boy, wanted to go back to Toronto because he knew what it was like to play in Toronto. I'm sure Donovan Zabrango's thrilled. He's going to play for the Ottawa Senators. He's from Ottawa. Great. Happy for you. But, be a Maple Leaf because you lived here for a minute? I don't know. Maybe go try something else. You're from Arizona. You're from this, everywhere else. Why is it? It's fascinating to me how that works. But nevertheless, we move on. Oh yes, I want to touch on baseball quickly here. I forgot about baseball this weekend. Talk more about baseball tomorrow at the midway point. Everything else is happening. Blue Jays, quick thoughts. Alek Manoah, 5+ innings, no walks, 8 Ks. The no walks is the biggest thing from the start. But I want to pump the brakes on Alek Manoah's back. He's got his swagger. We're back. The Jays. Okay, we took 2 of 3s from the Tigers, who stink, by the way. I'm not sold on him yet. I don't know if he's back. I don't know if he's back at all. I didn't see anything that would tell me this guy's completely dialed in. This guy is back to being even a guy who could pitch every 5 days, let alone your number one guy in your rotation. He pitched okay. He threw 27 pitches in the first inning. Again, he only went 5+. 5 innings is not exactly ace material. Maybe now in today's game where you can't go throw more than 90 pitches, but I need to see more, and I need to see him pitch against a good team. Blue Jays' first series back from the All-Star breaks against the Diamondbacks. If he pitches in that series and he pitches well, it's a good start. Otherwise, the Tigers still stink. Yet, the Tigers throw a combined no-hitter on Saturday afternoon against the Blue Jays, which is crazy. And the Tigers should have won yesterday if they weren't such a bad team. But at this point, the Blue Jays are in a good position. They're in the second wild card position. They're tied with it with the Houston Astros. 5 games back of the Baltimore Orioles, who are red hot, by the way. They're sad going into the All-Star break because they're playing fantastic baseball currently. The Yankees aren't. The Boston Red Sox are 2 games back of the final wild card spot. The AL East is competitive. Seattle's starting to find their game a little bit. They host the All-Star game this week. The Angels are out of it, in my opinion. Cincinnati Reds are so fun. Ella De La Cruz, how about that steal a second, steal a third, steal a home in the same inning? Miami Marlins are red hot. Mets and Padres still sit 6 and 7 games back of their division respectively. So we'll have a push to the trade deadline, but I want to talk more about baseball tomorrow. Just certain teams that have had either surprising on the good side or negative on their first half of the season. Going to talk about Summer League tomorrow. Summer League when it comes to the Victor Wembanyama. Watched his first 2 Summer League games. That actually, there's some Summer League on tonight. So probably we're going to watch some Summer League and watch Mission Impossible 5. But he looked a whole lot better last night. You're seeing some good talent around the association, some young guys who look good already. Again, it's a lot of young players. It's a lot of bad basketball, but I like seeing the mistakes. I've enjoyed watching Summer League so far. Tonight, we got the All-Star game, and we got the Home Run Derby with Pete Alonso as the betting favorite, followed closely behind Vladimir Guerrero's plus 300 on FanDuel Sportsbook. So not bad odds to get Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Be back tomorrow. Not sure I'll watch the Home Run Derby, but I'll know who won, so I can talk to you guys all about it. We'll talk about the first half of the Major League Baseball season. We'll talk some Summer League and any other news that comes our way throughout the day. Thank you all for tuning in. Hope you all have a great rest of your Monday. This is To The Point.